Hey y'all, welcome back to ENL 51, Rap as Poetry, Summer Session 2 here at UC Davis. Uh, I'm excited to talk about this week's songs and some of the concepts that we're digging into. We're back to it. So this week, we're going to be studying songs and thinking about concepts related to social injustice and inequality in rap music. In other words, we're thinking about the political nature of rap music and what the political content of a lot of different kinds of rap is. So yeah, let's get into it. I will go over the week's lesson, some key concepts, and give some background on the songs we're going to be studying, and then I'll give a little bit of examples of some ways you might begin to think analytically about some of these songs and concepts. So I'll share my screen. Cool. Yeah, great. ENO 51, I don't know why I need to read the thing to you. Make sure I'm in the right place. Social injustice and inequality, I call this week's suite of songs and concepts. Could call it social justice, but I think mostly the songs we're studying and a lot of political rap music is really about the nature of injustice more than justice, exactly, if that makes sense. Cool. So in my notes on these first couple pages of the lesson, I talk about the history of political rap music, how rap became political and what that means to different rappers. Historians often talk about, I name drop Jeff Chang in the notes here. He has a book, Can't Stop, Won't Stop. That's an amazing history of the hip hop generation and the hip hop movement. That kind of historicizes it, gives us a little bit of the cultural background, as well as digging into some of the important people in rap history. So I recommend that book as maybe I'll make a list of optional recommended reading list for y'all to dig into at your own leisure as you continue studying hip hop throughout your lives. So Jeff Chang and other historians talk about, and rappers themselves talk about the effects, especially of Ronald Reagan presidency and his economic policies that worsened poverty, and also his tough on crime stance, and in particular his mandatory minimum sentencing for drugs and kind of the racial disparities that are involved in a lot of that stuff. So a lot of people talk about how that set of historical circumstances influenced rap music and led a lot of rappers to speak politically on the issues that face them in their lives. We got a picture of Killer Mike looking super happy on the front page of the lesson here. Cool. So there's some notes here about stuff you'll want to think about in your reading response and think about as you analyze some of the rap lyrics that you're studying this week. I've also got some notes here on Adam Bradley, the scholarly book that we're reading, his book, The Book of Rhymes, and some of the stuff that he talks about there. I think that as you read more of that book and as you get more familiar with how to think analytically about rap and as poetry, as you learn more terms for poetic devices and stuff, you're going to notice more stuff that these rappers are doing and how complex their writing can be. So I talk about that a little bit, and I talk about some different poetic devices in the notes here that you might want to look up and think a little bit about with regards to this week's songs in particular, and just the stuff that we're studying this quarter or this summer session more generally. Cool. So let's get into the songs that we're studying this week. We're going to start it out with Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five, The Message. The MC in this song is Melly Mel. He's the only rapper on the track, on all 5 verses or whatever it is. This is a classic in hip hop history. This is one of the first songs that really came out with a hugely political message and talked about inequality and injustice in everyday life in a really real way. It remains a powerful song to this day, and it's one that any student of hip hop should know about, should think about. One of the optional reading response questions that you may consider using that I included in the reading responses on our Canvas page is about this song and what he's aiming to do in describing the different kinds of poverty and suffering that he encounters, that his communities encounter. And I talk about the rhetoric. What rhetorics does he use? And I'll talk about that term more a little bit later in the class as well. But when we talk about the rhetoric of something, we're asking like how the style and structure of a message, of a song, of a video, of a image, a photograph, an ad, whatever. Talk about how the style and structure of that message or that text relates to its content. How is it trying to persuade us of something? How is it trying to get us to be attracted to something or repulsed by something? How and why is the structure of this thing working? Is what we mean when we talk about the rhetoric of something. So I ask in the reading response questions, what are the rhetorics that Melly Mel is using in the message? Cool. So next up, we've got NWA, Fuck the Police. It's another classic of hip hop history. Very different, rhetorically speaking. The rhetorics that Ice Cube, Eazy-E, MC Ren, and Dr. Dre use in this song are very different than the rhetorics that Melly Mel uses in Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five song, The Message. So we might want to think about those differences. Why and how is this different? Obviously, maybe not obviously, I don't know. Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five are coming out of an earlier New York-based hip-hop tradition. NWA is one of the big culture shifts in rap history where we see California and the West Coast rising to prominence, and the Coast Wars, if you know anything about the history of rap in the late 80s, early and mid 90s, really kind of gets going around then with NWA. So that's another thing to kind of tuck in the back of your pocket, the back of your mind, if you're trying to learn the history of hip hop, to think about the time and the different eras and the geography of how these different songs and cultures and communities are adding different things to understanding of what hip hop can do and be. Cool. So Public Enemy, swinging back to New York. Rebel Without a Pause, Public Enemy, one of the first. If Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Fives, The Message was one of the first political rap songs to be really big. Public Enemy was one of the first hip hop groups, hip hop artists to be political. Overall, throughout their body of work, their whole thing was being revolutionary, talking about Black power, Black militancy, and really setting the stage for the kinds of Black nationalism that we'll see rise in over the next handful of years in the trajectory of hip hop. So I kind of just picked out a song that I like. I think Chuck D's rhymes are pretty good and his rhythm is pretty good in this particular song, but they've got a ton of work that's worth studying. I've got on the B-sides, the optional recommended songs here. Black Steel and the Hour of Chaos is a awesome narrative song that I almost put on the storytelling list. We're going to do storytelling next week, I think. So yeah, Public Enemy is awesome. Chuck D is awesome. Check him out. Next up, we've got Black Star. That's a group formed by Mos Def and Talib Kweli. Their first and sadly only album to date. Mos Def and Talib Kweli are Black Star, was like an instant underground classic. It shaped a lot of hip hop in the late 90s and early 2000s and remains really important to particular movements within hip hop. They were kind of coming a little bit after and a little bit out of the native tongues tradition and kind of the Back to Africa movement. Black Star, they got their name from Marcus Garvey's Back to Africa movement, his ship line that was trying to create kind of a Black nationalism Back to Africa movement was called Black Star. So that's where they get their name. Astronomy Eighth Light is all about their experiences of Blackness, and it gets both really metaphorical and really grounded in their political reality. So I love this song. I love Black Star. I love Mos Def. Talib Kweli is fine. So I've also got them on the B-sides as well. Another song of theirs, Thieves in the Night, is another great one from their album. Mos Def's Mathematics is a classic of underground hip hop or independent hip hop as well. Next up, this is like the weirdest song that I've got on our syllabus through the 6 weeks we're doing this thing. Soliloquists of Sound, Your Turn. This is a group that's like very underground. They're like Orlando, Florida-based underground vegan poetic hip hop from the mid 2000s. which is a thing, I guess, or is their thing at least. I love this group a lot. One of my buddies showed me their music back in the day when I was in college, and that's how that's how we did things before like YouTube and stuff. Is like we actually had to go over to each other's houses and listen to CDs and stuff like that. So this song is like super poetic, super complicated, super weird, and I wanted to give you just a little sense of how strange hip hop poetics can get. I think you can access this song on their Bandcamp if it's not on YouTube or whatever. Just Google Soliloquists of Sound. Bandcamp is from the album As If We Existed. It's a song that explores gender and sexism in American culture broadly, and it does it through really weird scientific, astrological imagery and stuff. So one thing you might analyze, one way that I would write my reading response is I would dig into that song. I think it's the hardest one to do, but there's a ton to talk about in it. And I would dig into the chorus, where Swanberger, one of the MCs, kind of repeats different words that have man or men in them, and kind of draws these connections between patriarchy or masculinity, masculine culture, and command, mandating, manipulation, thinking about what is at the core of masculinity that is like controlling in this way. And he's asking that through language by using wordplay and making connections between these different words and sounds. And so I think about like, what effect does that have on me as a listener / reader? What is Swanberger trying to accomplish with this? And then Alexandra, the other MC in the crew, comes at it in her second verse, or her first verse, the second verse, with a bunch of like W words and talking about women and her womanly experience. So yeah, there's a ton going on with language and gender and ideas of power and ideas of identity in the song that would be interesting to dig into. Finally, we've got Run the Jewels. That's LP and Killer Mike featuring Zach De La Rocha. Close Your Eyes and Count to Fuck from Run the Jewels 2. They're one of my favorite contemporary groups. I think their music is really something special. Their poetics are really complex and interesting. LP, he makes the beats. He used to run a record label out of New York called Def Jux. That was an underground thing. Killer Mike is from Atlanta and the Atlanta hip hop scene, and they started working together and they clicked and they make really interesting, strange music. This particular song give you kind of like the oral history of Run the Jewels featuring Zach De La Rocha. When we found out, when anybody in like the hip hop community culture that was especially interested in underground rap or political rap, when we found out the Run the Jewels 2 was coming, we got really excited. And this song, I think, was the first thing to drop from their second album. And they released it on SoundCloud. And, you know, we like all got the message on Facebook or whatever. And we were all like, oh shit, Run the Jewels featuring Zach De La Rocha. That was super exciting for a lot of us because Zach is from the old band Rage Against the Machine that a lot of us grew up with. And I learned a lot of my beginnings in understanding political thought and political music from Rage Against the Machine when I was like a teenager. And Zach has not made really any music at all since quitting Rage Against the Machine. So to see that Run the Jewels was working with him was like really exciting. Everybody was super into it and stoked. And then we listen to the song and his voice comes in and like does the hook. And so it was like, oh man, it felt like a tease. We hear like 3 verses of LP and Killer Mike, and they're great verses. But then Zach is just doing the chorus. And we're like, man, I wish I had gotten a Zach verse. And then like the 4th verse or whatever it is comes, and Zach comes in onto his own verse. And like on the SoundCloud website, you could like read messages that people wrote at the time in the song that they wrote them. You like react in time. And like there were just a ton of reactions when Zach came on the track, for real, when his verse started. And like, it's a great verse. It's a classic Zach De La Rocha verse. Cool. So that's a wonderful song also, and tons of wordplay and interesting stuff going on politically and poetically in Run the Jewels. I've also got Killer Mike's song Reagan on the B-sides. What else on the B-sides? Optional stuff. Kanye West, All Falls Down. That's like very early Kanye. He's a very different person than he is now. Yeah, look up on YouTube Kanye West Hurricane Katrina. George Bush doesn't care about black people. Kanye West used to be like a real radical dude. It's really sad what's been going on with him more recently. So yeah, where do we go from there? I've also got KRS-One, Queen Latifah, two old school, very important figures in hip hop history. And Sage Francis, he was an underground poetic rapper from the 2000s, stuff like that. And Joyner Lucas's video, I'm Not Racist, really cool, weird video, kind of uncomfortable to watch, but in a good way. So I highly recommend that as well. Finally, just a reminder for the Adam Bradley Book of Rhymes reading for the week, I've got listed some highlights, some like stuff that I think you should pay closer attention to in the chapter on rhythm. It's fine with me if you skim some of the chapter, but pay attention to these pages that I've listed. Those are for the early 2009 edition of the book, which is also the ebook for the Shields version, or what Shields has as ebook version. I don't know about the newer version of the book. I haven't gotten a chance to get my hands on it yet, so you might want to just double check and make sure they're the same. And if they're not the same, by next week, I will have the updated pages as well. And then the poems, I'm really excited to reread these poems and to think about them. Feel free to mention them in your reading responses if you like, though your main focus should be on the one song that you're writing about. Cool, I think that's about it. Thanks, y'all. I might do another video midweek. Yeah, I might do another video midweek after I get a chance to read and grade your reading responses. That was what I wanted to say. That's why I'm dragging my feet here. I want to let you know that I've hired a reader for the class, a grader. His name is Alan. He took this class a couple years ago. He knows his stuff. He's a really good dude. And so he's going to be doing a little bit of grading of your reading responses. How that's going to work is we'll each grade half of the class each week, and we're going to rotate or alternate. So all of you will be graded by me some weeks, week to week. All of you will be graded by me about half of the time, and all of you will be graded by Alan about half the time. Yeah, but if you have any questions about your grade or about anything like that, always email me. It's my job to be in communication with you about that. It is not Alan's job. He's just helping out with some grading. I think that's all I have to say about that for now. If you have any questions about that or about anything in this week's lesson, in the syllabus and the reading responses, feel free to email me. Those of you who have emailed me so far, I think you've seen that I write pretty helpful emails, though they're wordy and answer questions you didn't even know you had. That's kind of what I do. So cool. Thanks, y'all. I'm excited to hear from you and to read your reading responses. See you soon.